You mentioned pro-life and how that's
Mm.
sort of been co-opted by social justice. I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit because that's a big one. If you in today's climate, in just on social media or something as a Christian, you say, well, I'm pro-life, and then somebody's inevitably going to say something like, "Oh, Christians only care about getting babies born. They don't care about what happens after people are born. If you're truly going to be pro-life, you have to be against the death penalty. You have to be open borders. You have to be all this stuff." And you really kind of lifted the lid off that and demonstrated how that sort of social justice language has co-opted the pro-life movement. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what you have seen, particularly after the Dobbs decision came down overturning Roe, a lot of the people who had sort of staked a never Trump position suddenly were saying, well, what we have to do now, rather than just openly celebrating, look, we now have a chance to fight. And obviously, there's been some setbacks, and that fight needs to happen. We need to make the argument, and we need to demand recognition by
Yeah.
our political parties. And I encourage everyone to continue that fight.
Yes. Yes.
But it at least made a way for us to battle both nationally and on a state level for new abortion regulations. And instead of celebrating that, what you saw was so many evangelical leaders, including Russell Moore and Beth Moore and the author and columnist Karen Swallow Prior and many others, saying, well, what we have the opportunity to do now is put in place a greater social safety net so that women will not want abortions. Well, one, I have an issue with that already because, as we see all throughout biblical history, um, there is always a satanic impulse to kill our
Mm.
children.
Yes.
And in this era, it's to the God of convenience. So the idea that simply expanding the welfare state is going to make women stop seeking abortion is simply not borne out. For example, when we look at what the policies of the Johnson administration have done, particularly in the Black community, they did not have that effect. We have a large welfare state there, and all it has done is decimate marriage within the Black community. So I fail to see why expanding it further would have any different impact on the rest of America and American women. But so what they did at that point was start to say all of these other things also count as pro-life. Things like what our border policy is, what even climate change. They have said, well, if climate change has a negative impact on our weather and the weather is creating disasters and that's taking lives, well, now climate change has become a
Mm.
pro-life issue. And what you really see with that is that we don't do that with any other issues. We don't say, for example, with the Me Too movement, well, could Me Too also mean um, I was treated badly at a job because of my skin color, so Me Too? Well, no, it means something specific.
Hmm.
And so when you do that, what you do is dilute the power of the term so that if it means everything, it essentially means nothing. And that was the argument. And to me, the reason that that argument was made, and you saw it by so many, was because of who made Dobbs possible. And you don't have to like Donald Trump, you don't have to
Hmm.
support Donald Trump. But the reality is, the political reality is, he did appoint the justices as he promised who would overturn Roe v. Wade. And I think that that was such a problem for those who had staked such a position on evangelicals selling their souls to vote for him
Hmm.
that they could not give him that credit. That, yes, if nothing else, you kept your promise on appointing those justices. And that was why we saw such a rush to redefine what pro life meant.
Mm. Mm. Man, I think about all the corruption that you have exposed in the church, which it's hard, it's painful, it's heavy. But light, whenever we shine light on things, it's good, right? It's good even though it's hard.